Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna devotees. So we'll play Srila Prabhupada's Jai Radha Madhav. Hare Krishna, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, Hare Krishna, devotees. Yeah, I was trying to share Prabhupada Jayarada Madhav. I don't know what is happening. I don't know whether anybody was hearing.
Yes, we are hearing.
Okay, good. So we'll commence with today's class. Today we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 1st Canto, chapter 8, text number 5. So I'll chant the Mangala prayers and then we'll go into the text. Om Namo Bhagavati Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavati Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavati Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavati Vasudevaya. Om Agyanam Timirandasya Gyanam Gyanam Chalakaya. Shaksho Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Nama. Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Jena Bhutale. Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swampadahantikam. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate. Gopicha Gopika Kakanta Radha Kanta Namostute. Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Devinda Vaneshwari. Vrishabhanu Shite Devi Pranamami Nari Priye. Vanchakarpataru Vyascha Kripa Sundubhyasivascha. Patitanam Pava Ashnebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srinivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare. So today we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 1st Canto, chapter 8, text number 5. So I'll read the Sanskrit text, the transliteration, and the purport in a usual manner. Sadaitai vachita asatru swam rajyam kitavai eritam gatait vasato rajna kachas pasa satayusha sadait vajata satru swam rajyam kitavai eritam gatai Twasato Rajna Kachas Pasa Satayusa. Word for word translation. Sadaitwa, having executed Ajata Satru, of one who has no enemy. Swam Rajyam, own kingdom. Ki Tavai, by the clever Duryodhan and party, written or sought. Gataitwa, having killed Asata, the unscrupulous Rajnai, Rajnai of the queens, Kacha, bunch of air, Sparsa, roughly handled, Shataha, decreased, Ayusaha, by the duration of life. Translation by His Divine Grace Laisi Bhaktivedanta Swami Jagaguru Savior of Devotion of Prabhupada. The clever Duryodhan and his party cunningly usurped the kingdom of Yudhishthira, who had no enemy. By the grace of the Lord, the recovery was executed, and the unscrupulous kings who joined with Duryodhan were killed by him. Others also died, their duration of life having been decreased for their rough handling of the heir of Queen Draupadi. Purport by His Divine Grace Laishi Bhaktivedanta Swami Jagaguru Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. In the glorious days, or before the advent of the age of Kali, the brahmanas, the cows, the women, the children, and the old men were properly given protection. The protection of the brahmanas maintains the institution of Varna and Ashram, the most scientific culture for attainment of spiritual life. The protection of cows maintains the miraculous form of food, milk, for maintaining the finer tissues of the brain, for understanding higher aims of life. The protection of women maintains the chastity of society, by which we can get a good generation of peace, for peace, tranquility, and progress of life. The protection of children gives the human form of life its best chance to prepare the way of liberty from material bondage. Such protection of children begins from the very day of begetting a child by the purificatory process of Garbhadan Samskara, the beginning of pure life. The protection of the old men gives them a chance to prepare themselves for better life after death. This complete outlook is based on factors leading to successful humanity, as against the civilization of polished cats and dogs. The killing of the above mentioned innocent creatures is totally forbidden, because even by insulting them, one loses one's duration of life. In the age of Kali, they are not properly protected, and therefore the duration of life of the present generation has shortened considerably. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is stated that when the women become unchaste for want of proper protection, there are unwanted children called Vana Sankara. To insult a chaste woman means to bring about disaster in the duration of life. Dushashan, a brother of Duryodhan, insulted Draupadi, an ideal chaste lady, and therefore the miscreants died ultimately. These are some of the stringent laws of the Lord mentioned above. Hare Krishna. Homagyanam Timarandasya Gyanagyanam Shalakaya Shakshya Militam Dena Tasmai Shri Agurave Nama Shri Chaitanya Manovistam Stapitam Dena Bhutale Swayam Rupam Kadama Yam Dadati Swam Padanti Kam. E Krishna Karuna Shindu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kantara Da Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gorangera Devindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Shute Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Vanchakrapataru Vyascha Kripastan Vyasivacha Patitanam Pavashnebhyo Vashnebhyo Namo Namah. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Shri Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Rama Rama Hare Hare. So once again, we want to welcome all of the devotees to this Srimad Bhagavatam class for today, the 80th day of the month of April, the year 2021. So we're reading from first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter number 8, text number 5, which is a continuation of narration of the activities of the Lord and his devotee, as we have had in the previous chapters of this first canto, from Narad Muni to Vyasadeva, the importance of hearing the subject matter about the Lord and his devotees. So this chapter is titled The Prayers of Kunkinti. And in the particular text we are reading today, a picture is formed before us. And Srila Prabhupada, so expertly in his usual manner, taking the activities of the Lord's narration to give the essence of Krishna consciousness movement. In the text we are reading today, the most important subject matter mentioned here is the activity of Duryodhana and Draupadi and Maharaj Yudhishthira. But emphasis is made on Maharaj Yudhishthira's qualities and Duryodhana. The text reads that clever Duryodhana and his party cunningly usurped the kingdom of Maharaj Yudhishthira. But then, the qualification of Maharaj Yudhishthira is emphasized, Ajata Satru, meaning one who has no enemy. In the material world, generally, there are two kinds of beings, as stated in the Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita chapter 16, text number 6, Lord Krishna says that in this material world, there are two kinds of created beings. One is called divine and the other is demoniac. And from the beginning of generation till date, these two types of living entities have always existed coexistently in this material world. And the activities of these two personalities is what determine the experience that we see in the material world in general. In this text we are reading today, Duryodhana is depicting the natural symptoms of a modern man. And that is where Prabhupada directed his purport into this text. Prabhupada carefully gave the essence of Krishna consciousness movement in his purport to this text today, emphasizing the nature of this material world, especially this age, Kali Yuga. What is happening? What is the solution? And what is the ultimate exit from this age that we are in? So Srila Prabhupada, instead of much of the storyline that has to do with this Duryodhana, Prabhupada in the purport went straight to describe the qualities of Duryodhana and Maharaj Yudhishthira and how it reflects in the previous ages and our modern times. In that text of Bhagavad Gita chapter 16, text number 1 to 3, Lord Krishna enumerated the qualities, 24 qualities of one who is a divine person. And in the text number 4, it mentions 7 qualities of a divine person. But Prabhupada, in his usual style, he always gives a maximum mileage in each and every test. He uses each and every test to give the essence of the Krishna consciousness movement. Mileage means, just like in a car, the mileage is the maximum speed a car can go. So in each and every text of the scriptures, Srila Prabhupada translation and the purport, Srila Prabhupada always give the maximum mileage in each and every text. And that is what he did in this purport of this text today. Srila Prabhupada, instead of limiting this purport just to the activities of Duryodhana and Maharaj Yudhishthira, Srila Prabhupada, and he gave the essence of the whole of the Krishna consciousness movement. When we look at the 7 purposes of ISKCON, there are 7 of them in numbers. And the number 1 of that purpose of ISKCON movement, in one sentence, Prabhupada gave 4 specific information that leads from the beginning of the human existence to the what is meant to be the exit of man on earth. The first purpose of ISKCON movement, Srila Prabhupada explained, that is to systematically propagate spiritual knowledge to society at large and to educate all people in the techniques of spiritual life in order to check the imbalance of values in life and to achieve real unity and peace in the world. This is interesting. We're talking about Duryodhana's activities. Its demoniac nature, with his cohorts, his teams, his followers, as explained as dictated in the purport, in the text. And in the first purpose of ISKCON, Srila Prabhupada, in the purport of this text, gave the whole of the essence of Krishna consciousness. When we look at the purpose of ISKCON, that number 1, just that one sentence, Prabhupada specifically gave one thing, and that is how Prabhupada maximized each opportunity to give the whole of the essence of the teachings of the Vedas. In that number 1 purpose of ISKCON, Srila Prabhupada said 4 things basically. Number 1 is that to systematically propagate spiritual knowledge to society at large. Why is there the need for knowledge for the society? Because the world that we live in, that is why Prabhupada started by comparing in the olden good days and the present days, which is characterized or which is described as age of Kali. That was the first sentence of Srila Prabhupada in the purport. Prabhupada said that in the glorious day, or before the advent of the age of Kali, the brahmanas, the cows, the women, the children, and the old men were properly given protection. So instead of just focusing on Duryodhana's activities and the qualities of Maharaj Yudhishthira, Srila Prabhupada is giving for the modern man the whole essence of spiritual life, as captured in that purpose of ISKCON. Prabhupada is in this one single purport is giving what he has defined in the purpose of ISKCON to systematically propagate spiritual knowledge. When you see the purport of Srila Prabhupada, Prabhupada itemized these 5 items very significantly and how they help in helping a modern man to achieve the ultimate goal of life, which is the purpose of ISKCON. Recently, there was a panel program on one of the local TVs, and there was another religious man on the panel with us discussing. And the host asked a very interesting question, looking at the situation of Nigeria where we are, that there is so much of problem in this country. And he was asking the co-panelist on that program, who happens to be a pastor of a church. He said, can you identify the problem of this world, especially in Nigeria, as related to what we are experiencing today in the form of insecurity, kidnapping, banditry, and all of the rest of the problems that man is facing? And the man came out, he explained that inclusion of religion in governance is the cause of the problem that man is facing. And I laughed. I smiled when I heard that statement from him, because this is the general mentality of modern man. Modern man, due to lack of knowledge of spirituality, thinks religion is a cause rather than a blessing to humanity. And Srila Prabhupada expertly give the essence of religion as the key solution to modern man's difficulty in this purport. So Prabhupada compared the old times. In the Bhagavad Gita chapter 8, says number 17. As we know, the material world is divided into 4 cyclic rotational cycle. And when Prabhupada said, in the glorious day, is referring to the age of Satya Yuga. And Satya Yuga is characterized, according to that purport of Srila Prabhupada in that text of chapter 8, text number 17, that Satya Yuga, or the glorious days, as Prabhupada mentioned it here, is characterized by virtue, wisdom, and religion. And because those 3 ingredients are there in the glorious days, there practically has no ignorance of vices. In other words, Prabhupada is emphasizing right from the beginning that the whole of the catastrophe, individually, collectively, nationally or internationally, globally, the whole of the problem that humanity is facing is as a result of lack of virtue, wisdom, and religion. Because the presence of these 3 qualities in the glorious days, as Prabhupada described it in this purport, brings about peace, unity, and tranquility that man so much desire in this age. Every man in this age is strongly desiring peace. And that is why you find United Nations, Parliament of Religions, and all kinds of organizations formed in the world, all centered around bringing about peaceful existence in this material world. But unfortunately, the real solution to solving all of these difficulties of man on earth is forgotten. The real solution, which is dharma or religion, is seen as what? As a difficulty, just like that pastor said. So I countered the argument and I said, no, this cannot be true, because the absence of religion in governance, in leadership, leads to destruction of society. And that is what Prabhupada is saying in this purport. Kali Yuga, as we know, is characterized by so many qualities that are unpalatable, which are manifesting in our modern day society. In the 12th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, the 2nd chapter, text number 1, Sukadev Goswami, he told Maharaj Parikshit, he said, my dear king, in this age, religion, truthfulness, cleanliness, tolerance, mercy, duration of life, physical strength, and memory will all diminish day by day because of the powerful influence of the age of Kali. So that is why Prabhupada carefully uses this demoniac or the demoniac qualities exhibited by Duryodhana and his cohorts in comparison to the religious or godly qualities of Maharaj Yudhishthira to explain in this purport. And like we said, Prabhupada in the purpose of ISKCON, he said this movement, International Society for Krishna Consciousness, the purpose is to systematically propagate spiritual knowledge, that which helps the society at large. And when such a knowledge is disseminated in the society by giving simple techniques, which Prabhupada enumerated in 5 cardinal points here, how the society can be what? Can attain what is said in the end of that sentence of the purpose of ISKCON. What are the techniques? That technique is what Prabhupada gave in this purport of this Bhagavatam verse. And when these techniques are followed, they will ultimately lead to the fulfillment of the purpose of ISKCON, of Srila Prabhupada. And this is the true responsibilities of all the followers of ISKCON movement. Because unless one is able, by utilizing this knowledge that is available to us in the form of Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, to relate to the present day's difficulties that man is facing, then the purpose of ISKCON will not be fulfilled. In one of his purports to the Bhagavad Gita text, in chapter 14 specifically, text number 19 in the purport, Srila Prabhupada said, similarly, it is from those who are fully in Krishna consciousness that one has to learn the science of activities in terms of modes of material nature and otherwise, to correct the imbalance of the misdirected situation in the material world. We are members of ISKCON movement. We daily read Srimad Bhagavatam, we read Bhagavad Gita, but most of times they become just a philosophical treatise to us because we do not actually fulfill the mission of Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada's purpose of us reading these literatures is to imbibe them in our institution and by extension teach it to the larger society. The world today, in the early days, Srila Prabhupada said, given the opportunity in 18 days, he can transform the whole of the world. And devotees were wondering, how can this be done? Prabhupada gave it in this purport, in these 5 cardinal points. Prabhupada said, number 1, the protection of the Brahmanas maintains the institutions of Varna and Ashram, the most scientific culture for attainment of spiritual life. We all understand what Varnashram Dam is. The Varnashram Dam is the social institution known which divide the society into 4 divisions of social and 4 occupational divisions of life. And Srila Prabhupada emphasized clearly that this social order is not in anything related to the caste system known in India. The 4 social order and the spiritual orders of life, as given by the Vedic scriptures, and are to keep the society in a state of peace and prosperity. In the purport to that text, chapter of Bhagavad Gita I quoted earlier, chapter 16, text 1 to 3, in the very 3rd paragraph, Prabhupada emphasized that the Varnashram system is meant to divide the human society not according to birth, but according to the qualification that each and everyone has. And those qualities of the practice of Varnashram Dam are meant to keep the society at large in peace and prosperity. So the Prabhupada said that if these 5 items that is highlighting here, if there is a proper attention to this by the government of the world, by even our institution, ISKCON movement, even in our own system, sometimes it's very difficult to understand why there is so much of philosophical knowledge, why there is so much of wealth of information, and yet there is so much of imbalances. It is because of lack of adherence to what Prabhupada gave in this purport. So Prabhupada focuses on this purport of this text today by giving what is required, what Prabhupada described in his purpose of ISKCON as techniques. What are those techniques? 5 basic things Prabhupada said here. According to the institution of Varna and Ashram must be taught. And what cannot give what it does not have? If ourselves as ISKCON do not understand what the Varnashram Dam is, or do not practice it in our day-to-day life, or do not implement them in our activities, how then can we teach the society? Srila Prabhupada has emphasized that only those who are trained in Krishna consciousness, in this science of Krishna consciousness, can save the world from the turmoil, from the difficulties that the world is facing, because all of the problems of the world is centered around lack of religion, as it is explained in the 12th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, that this age is characterized by irreligion. Unfortunately, people accept religion to be irreligion, and irreligion to be religion. So Prabhupada mentioned here the scientific culture, the protection of Brahmanas, specifically maintains the institution of Varna and Ashram, the most scientific culture for attainment of spiritual life. So if the Brahmanas, Prabhupada said, when he came to America, he said, we are starting this movement of International Society for Krishna Consciousness to train brahmanas. That is the statement of Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada did not start this movement to cultivate, to gather Sudras. And we all know what are the qualifications of a brahmanas. The presence of imbalance in the lives, whether as a devotee or non-devotee, is as a result of lack of protections of the Brahmanical culture. With the Brahmanical culture, when we see in the beginning days, even in the beginning days of ISKCON, in West Africa and all over the world, people sometimes wonder, they said in the beginning days, there's so much of bliss. Devotees are very blissful. But what is the secret? Prabhupada is given in this purport. Because Prabhupada was a qualified Brahmana, and he exhibited the qualities of a Brahmin, and he related to everyone and each and everyone he met in the mode of a Brahmana. And that was where the secret lies in development of ISKCON movement that we have today, that has grown to a worldwide organization. Number two, Prabhupada mentioned, the protection of cows maintains the most miraculous form of food. Example, milk, for maintaining the finer tissues of brain, for understanding higher aims of life. Unfortunately, some modern scientists are claiming, and some even so-called metaphysics of so-called spiritualists in their own way, call themselves vegan, and they criticize the intake of cow milk out of ignorance. But it is mentioned here, according to the Vedic standard, the protection of the cows gives the cows a kind of very auspicious mood, and it supplies milk, and the intake of milk produces finer tissues. Modern man's head is dull, even though they claim to be so much in knowledge. The modern day's reality is that we have so many. Modern man, they pride in having advanced in every field of life. But we see, in contrast to their so-called expansion or expanding knowledge, we see that there are so many big houses all over the world today. But the integral aspect of what makes a house, the families, are not there. There are so much of educational systems in the world today, but there is no common sense. The simple, basic common sense is not there. According to Vedic scriptures, especially in the Bhagavad Gita, in the number one sloki of the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna told Arjuna, Aham sarvasya prabhava mata sarva pravatate iti matua bhajante mam buddhabhava samavita. That what? Knowledge constitutes what? Becoming enlightened. If one is actually knowledge, it must be enlightened. And what is that knowledge that brings enlightenment? Knowledge of God. And when one has that kind of a knowledge, what does it translate to? It translates into bhakti. Unfortunately, modern man considers knowledge to be power. And that is why you see that the whole world is dominated by capitalists. There's so much of ulabalu on the pandemic that is ravaging the world. And it is obviously clear from analysis that these are man-made creations. For what purpose? This is the advancement of so-called knowledge. In the Upanishad, it is explained that the whole of this material world is running on two wheels of ignorance and knowledge. Knowledge brings about happiness. It brings about auspiciousness. But the world is not happy. As a result of what? Avidya, ignorance. So the world is so much in ignorance. And that knowledge is what Krishna consciousness affords us. It is not enough to understand, to read the Srimad Bhagavatam, to read the Bhagavad Gita, to read Chaitanya Charitamrita. But it is important that we live. Krishna consciousness means to live. It is a lifestyle. And that is what Prabhupada is talking about here. That one has to cultivate that lifestyle of protecting the 5 ingredients of creation. The Brahmanas, maintaining the Brahmanical culture. And secondly, uh, uh, protection of the cows. Unfortunately, we all know what is going on. So much slaughterhouses. And even in the so-called Holy Land, the land of Bharat, is said to be like almost second, third largest supply of meat. This is the unfortunate situation of the world. And that is why there's so much of a problem in the society, in the world at large. The world is seeking out for peace and tranquility, but they will never get that peace and tranquility until these 5 principles are adhered to. Prabhupada emphasized the third one. The protection of women maintains the chastity of society, by which we can get a good generation. And Prabhupada said, for peace, tranquility, and progress of life. These are the things that a man desires in this life. Everybody wants peacefulness. There is so much billions of dollars. You need to check. Go on to United Nations website and type fundings to supporting civil society organizations in the matters of peace building in the world. And you will be amazed the amount of money that is spent annually, globally, in trying to achieve peace. But Prabhupada is giving the simple peace formula here in 5 just simple things. And number 3 here is saying that protection of women. 2 weeks ago, the U.S. ambassador came to Nigeria, and the U.S. ambassador to Nigeria came from Abuja to Jos, and we had an interaction with him, religious leaders, and he met with different sectors of the society, and he called the religious leaders on the plateau where our temple is. So I was one of the participants of that program, and he was asking this and every religious leader that there is so much of trouble in Nigeria, there's so much of banditry. The government is. What do you think is the problem? What can the U.S. government do to support? And he started emphasizing that U.S. government, he quoted so much of billions of dollars that the U.S. government is giving to Nigeria to support, to assist in reducing the criminalities, in banditry and lack of good governance. He said, but to their amazement, the more money, the more solution, the more assistance U.S. government is giving to the Nigerian government, the more crime that they are experiencing. So as religious leaders, what do you think can be done? And when everybody was speculating, give us money, we'll share to our members. So, but when I was to talk and I explained to them, I came from this angle, very angle the Prabhupada is mentioning in this purport. I said, if you want a peaceful society, then there must be a strong attention given to protection of womanhood. Incidentally, that week was the week of United Nations Women's Day. So I took it from that angle, and I was explaining to them that we as United Nations, so much money is being spent in celebrating Women's Day. But what is the significance of Women's Day when women are not protected? And I started analyzing based on Srila Prabhupada's purport. In chapter 1 of Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada, when Arjuna was arguing about religious duties, and I was explaining to the ambassador that, look here, if you want a transformation of Nigeria, it has to be a systematic education of the society. The first and foremost thing you need to do, there must be a protection of women. This mentality of equality of gender cannot be sustained and experience peace in the society. And that is what Srila Prabhupada is explaining here, because women in today's world are not protected according to the Vedic standard. In the beginning of life, when a woman or a girl child is to be under the protection of the father, in her middle age, she should be under the protection of her husband, and in her later age, under the protection of her first child. But today, what is the situation? There is so much madness, let's call it madness, in the name of women liberation. And these are why the result of the situation we found. And when we look at not just the world at large, when we look at our own individual lives in Krishna consciousness, Srila Bhakti Maharaj, our Guru Maharaj, when he started his IFAS program in the US, he centered most of his activities on this topic, that women must be protected. And he extracted out these Prabhupada's principles, what he calls here techniques, as emphasized in the purpose of ISKCON, that these simple techniques of protection of these 5 ingredient of the society will automatically bring peace. In our movement also, we have seen how there was a time, there was a researcher that did some research, and he found out that in ISKCON, the movement that is supposed to be the solution to the world, that at a point in time, the rate of divorce in our ISKCON movement is almost surpassing that of the social system. And that is unfortunate. We have this subject matter. We have this knowledge. So what are we doing with it? If you ask me, the problem of the world today are not those who are ignorant about what is to be done. The problem of today is as a result of those of us who claims to be in knowledge. Because if one is not in knowledge, it is understood, his ignorance is accepted. But when one claims to be in knowledge, that is more dangerous to the society. So for us, for those of us who claim to be Krishna conscious, to be devotees of Krishna, then we must see that our activities is highly responsible for the society that we have. So we have a big task at our hand. In the fourth item Prabhupada mentioned, he said the protection of children gives the human form of life its best chance to prepare for the way of liberty from material bondage. Such protection of children begins from the very day of begetting a child by the purificative process of Garbhadan Samskara, the beginning of pure life. In other words, there cannot be pure life without the Garbhadan Samskara. Somebody was asking a class a question in one of Bhagavatam class some time ago, and he was asking, he said, why is it that our today's children in ISKCON are all going against our movement? And the question I ask is that what? How many of our ISKCON devotees are following this Garbhadan Samskara as it's explained in our scripture? Prabhupada said we should dress ourselves, then we can address the society. Unless we put these things in our consciousness and live it in our own lifestyle, it will be difficult to give it to the world. That is the reality of our today Krishna consciousness movement. We are meant, it is said in this Bhagavatam that when Lord Krishna was living, this age of Kali is considered a notion of a notion of fault. It's a notion of fault, but the only good thing in this age is the Srimad Bhagavatam that the Lord has given to us through Srila Vyasadeva, Sukadev Goswami, Srila Prabhupada, and our acharyas. But to get knowledge is not just to get knowledge. To get knowledge means that one lives. When Hiranyakasipu asked Prahlad Maharaj, after sending him to school, he said, what is the best thing that you have learned in your education? What did Prahlad Maharaj give? He gave 9 items. He said, the best knowledge I have learned in the course of my duties is the devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which includes 9 angers. The week before the Easter Sunday that has just passed, I had an intercultural debate and discourse, an interview. There is a student, we normally have an interface with universities locally, and it is extending to university to abroad now based on recommendation. There was a student sent from Ashbury University in US, who is a student in Nigeria. He is studying online due to COVID-19. He couldn't go back to the campus in US. He studies with the he's a reverend father with the Evangelical Church of West Africa. So he has to come from the neighboring state, from Katsina State specifically. He came to Jos. First, they sent a letter they were trying to get ISKCON, any closest ISKCON in Nigeria. Then somehow or the other, they got my number online. And then they came. And this Reverend Father came, and he was asking the same question. And he was asking, it's the same thing Kashipu was asking Prahlad Maharaj. He asked the same question, interestingly. So I gave Prahlad answer. I said, what is the best education you have gotten? in this Krishna consciousness movement? No, I told him. I said the best education is that ultimately human life must come to the climax of becoming a devotee of the Lord. And I said, what is the devotion? What is being devoted to the Supreme Lord? And I enumerated these 9 items of bhakti. And when I named them, he asked to ask me, where in our scriptures can he find it? And I gave it to him. He said, this will help me so much in my missionary activity as a reverend father. This is what Srila Prabhupada has given to us. This is what the acharyas have given to us. Krishna consciousness is not just about speaking big philosophy, but our lifestyle must reflect the practical protection of these 5 items that Srila Prabhupada mentioned in the purport. Srila Prabhupada would have just narrated the nice story of Duryodhana, his demoniac activities. We see this happening in so much of our classes. Bhagavatam classes going on, and we're laughing, we're so blissful. We're hearing how Duryodhana is being punished because of his demoniac nature, and how Yudhishthira Maharaj, Ajatasashri, how it's being glorified. And we become pleased by seeing that. But then, what is the value of all of this if our practical devotional life does not reflect this knowledge? Then we defeat the purpose of ISKCON. The purpose of ISKCON, Srila Prabhupada mentioned, like I said, just take one. Prabhupada is so powerful because it's so powerfully empowered. In one word, Prabhupada will put so many things inside. There's a nice story in the beginning days of ISKCON, when Srila Prabhupada made the Beatles for the first time in UK. Srila Prabhupada was asked by the leader of the Beatles, George Harrison. George Harrison asked Srila Prabhupada, before George Harrison met Srila Prabhupada, he has met several gurus. He mentioned that he has met at least about 7 serious or powerful gurus from India and all over the world before meeting Srila Prabhupada. So when he met Srila Prabhupada, he asked Prabhupada something very interesting. He said, Srila Prabhupada said, how can I identify who is a bona fide guru? And Srila Prabhupada could go into explaining so many qualifications of a guru. But Prabhupada didn't do that. How did Srila Prabhupada answer? Srila Prabhupada simply told him, he said, you can identify a bona fide guru by how he is addicted to God. Now, in the material sense, the word addiction is a very, very negative word. But this is the power of a pure devotee. Srila Prabhupada used the word addiction. Prabhupada could say attachment to Krishna. He could say devotion to Krishna, but it will not carry the meaning. Prabhupada used the word addiction just to emphasize. Prabhupada in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, Satatam Krita Yantoman, Lord Krishna told Arjuna, the devotees of the Lord are always, what is their symptom? Always glorifying, always exhibiting the glories of Krishna. They always have no other duty but glorifying Krishna. So Prabhupada did not refer to his activity. He did not just say, but just by telling George Harrison, by his addiction to godly activities, by George being an intelligent man, immediately you could see in the life of Srila Prabhupada that this man has no other business than what? His addiction to Krishna. So he's accepted Srila Prabhupada. This is the reason why Srila Prabhupada is giving this. The purpose of ISKCON movement, again, is that what? The purpose of ISKCON has given Srila Prabhupada, let us leave the 6 other items which are supporting the number 1. In the number 1 purpose of ISKCON, Srila Prabhupada has emphasized very emphatically that 4 things is mentioned there. The purpose of this movement, International Society for Krishna Consciousness, is to systematically propagate spiritual knowledge to the society at large. 1. Number 2, to educate all people in the techniques of spiritual life. So how do we propagate knowledge? By educating the public with the techniques which Prabhupada is giving in this purport. And what is the result if we are able to teach by our lifestyle these techniques that Prabhupada has taught? Because if we do not live these techniques, we can give it to others. No one can give to others what he does not have. So Papa said, we must teach the techniques. But how do we teach the techniques? By manifesting in our own life, by being contagious by our own life living of Christian consciousness. And when that happens, what will that do? In the same number one purpose, Papa, the third point Papa mentioned, it will check the imbalance in the values of life of individuals who are practicing and the general society at large. And when there is removal of imbalance in life, what will happen automatically? It will, real unity, peace will be attained individually and globally. This is what Prabhupada has given to us. Prabhupada could have just given another way of it, but he itemized these 5 things. Number 5 of it, because of time, Prabhupada said the protection of the old men gives them a chance to prepare themselves for better life after death. Today, we are building so many hospices in India. But in our West African situations, it's like Gurudev, and I will summarize here. It's like Gurudev said, so back to Maharaj, the best way one can leave the legacy of a representative of God is by establishing that system that reflects the teachings of that Acharya. This is the task for each and every one of us. So in the test, we have had that Duryodhan with his cohorts, just like the demoniac people in the world today, they cunningly usurped the kingdom of a pious person who is divine by nature, Maharaj Yudhishthira. And because they did that, naturally, the grace of the Lord follows those who are divine. So the Yudhishthira Maharaj's kingdom was recovered. And all of those who are cohorts, who exhibited the qualities of Duryodhan, the demoniac qualities, they all got killed. And their duration of life, Prabhupada mentions in the text, it says, and also their duration of life having been decreased for their rough handling of the heir of Drupadi. And Prabhupada has itemized that in the purport. So the summary of this discussion today is that the Krishna consciousness movement that Srila Prabhupada has given to us is summed up in this purport of today's text. That as ISKCON movement, as devotees of ISKCON, we should reflect in our system the manifestation of the protections of these 5 important aspects of creation of God to bring about peace, tranquility, and progress in life. If that is adhered to, then not only that will be blissful in Krishna consciousness, but we'll create a society of peaceful people around us. Hare Krishna. I would like to stop here because time is fast spent, and give the opportunity to the devotees and to be able to ask some questions. But the summary of this discussion is that it is not just about reading. My emphasis is on the fact that let us apply these 5 principles Prabhupada has given in our ISKCON movement, and in no time, we will see a transformation in the whole world. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Salika Prabhu. That was fully loaded class. And I believe that creates lots of room for questions. I think our first question is from Keshava Prabhu. You can unmute and ask your question, Prabhuji.
Yes. Can you hear me, Salika Prabhu?
Yes, I can hear you, Prabhuji.
I have to say that every word you said really resonated very, very deeply. I think we have a very similar mindset in many ways. And I really think you address one of the fundamental issues that is disturbing our society, but at the same time is also an issue that is put on the back burner, so to speak, not really brought out and given the attention it needs. And I'll give an example, because before, in the days of the pandemic, the Hare Krishna Youth Ministry, we had a large 45-foot bus, 15-foot bus, which at one time had 56 seats in there, and all the seats were taken out. And these bunk beds, 2 or 3 level bunk beds were put in there to accommodate all these gurukulis. And we would go on sometime a 2 or 3 month trip of US, Canada, and down into Mexico. And we'd, visit New Vrindavan and help with temple restoration, cleaning of the temple, agricultural projects, working on the farm, etc. So all these young gurukulis of all ages and all ethnic backgrounds would, participate on this 2 or 3 month tour. And I remember being with a friend of mine, a sannyasi from Canada, and we had lined up to take prasadam. And one of the boys just said, well, why don't we just allow the sannyasi and the group of drivers to go to the front of the line and be served prasadam first? And from the back of the line, somebody just shouted out, no, they can get in line like everybody else. Now, I would see a lot of these children, and I would just see the way they would behave and the way they would interact with the senior devotees and everything else. And I could just tell that they came from good stock. And sometime I would take them aside and say, you're born in ISKCON? Yes. May I ask who your parents are? And they would identify their parents, and something would go off in my head. And I said, well, that makes sense. From a good apple comes, you can't get, one bad seed comes from another, so to speak, And I could see actually that these children were the end result of parents who had undergone the purificatory processes before, conceiving a child. And purity is the force, and I have to say, I was quite shocked and disappointed. I said something to one sannyasi and also to Jayadvaita Maharaj one time about the caliber of these people who came on these tours. And they were going out on Harinams and everything else in Mexico, but when they come back to the bus at the end of the day, the language they would use, the way they would dress, the way they would speak with each other, the way they would interact with senior devotees, if somebody covered my eyes, the last thing I would believe is these were kids who had been brought up in a spiritual environment with spiritual goals, and it was disturbing to see these things, and something else I was going to say. What is it now? Yeah, it's just that you can actually see, that it works, and there's a real need for that. Oh yes, the other point I was going to make was we had one when I was in Nairobi. We had a Ghanaian devotee, young in his 20s. I can't remember his name, but he plays the accordion. And he had told me personally that his Guru Maharaj, Kavichandra Swami, had said, please keep away from all these kirtaniyas. If you're going to North America or Europe, please avoid these kirtaniyas. Why, Guru Maharaj? He said, because most of them do not follow the regulated principles. Of course, everybody's vegetarian. Nobody fights with that one. But with the other ones, they have just a very, well, I'm born a devotee. My parents are devotees. So automatically, I'm better than everybody else. And I can bring about an effective change in the society, but that's not the case. So yeah, I very much appreciate that point you're making, how we have to, work on ourselves, bring about a change in our revolution in our own heart before we can bring about a revolution in the society. So I just want to say, I really appreciate your very global, large-minded mindset. And one more thing I'll also add in is a couple of years ago when I was in, you were talking about being a panelist on one of these discussions and the issue of crime and what to do about it. And it just brought to mind that conversation that Prabhupada had with the police chief in Chicago in 1975. And Bhakti Vasudeva Maharaj had sent me all these articles that he had written and submitted. And he talked about one of the former cabinet ministers or some high profile, some high ranking person in Nigeria had undergone, his words really made me laugh, sonic therapeutic intervention. And after having undergone sonic therapeutic intervention, i.e. chanting Hare Krishna, he was able to overcome his compulsion to, engage in acts that would not be too much appreciated by the general masses of people. So anyway, thank you very much. I really appreciate you acknowledging that, bringing that out, and hopefully by doing so, we can take that on as one of our institution's major challenges in the upcoming periods of time. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much, Professor, for your comments. I think you captured the whole of the points. The thing is that actually, like the verse I quoted in the purport of Srila Prabhupada, no one can save this universe from the present situation that is in except devotees. And devotees does not just mean being a member of Hare Krishna movement. We just have to live what the scripture says, and then we'll see a very massive transformation. That is That is the own essence. That's where, because that's what Prabhupada take the purpose from. And I was just trying to follow in the footsteps. Prabhupada was not really looking at the traditional stories of Duryodhana. Prabhupada took it to the glorious days on this earth, where things were nice, where things are working fine. And then today's world, where in the age of Kali, everything is like off-tea, and everybody's in anxiety, stress, and all of that, despite the whole of the knowledge. And so I'm just trying to follow the mood of the Prabhupada's purpose. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Salika Prabhu. I was wondering how you were going to answer Keshava Prabhu's question, because it was a sandwich of questions and comments, and somehow you were able to figure a way out to understand both his comments and questions. Thank you so much. The next person in line is Dr. George. Dr. George, unmute and ask your question, please.
Okay, Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Dr. George, you're welcome.
Okay, thank you very much for very elaborating lecture.
You're welcome.
So we are few here, but we see that the lecture will generate a lot of questions today, because for me personally, I have about 5 questions to ask, but that will be when the time permits. First of all, no, please, I would like to know, actually, Prabhupada say we cannot change anything here, because if something has to be changed here, Krishna himself will have changed it here. So why are you bothered? I would like to know, first of all. Yes, that's my first question.
Okay. So why do we bother about the troubles going in the world? We should just then why did Prabhupada took the trouble to come from the India to America to preach? The world is not meant, this material world is a prison house of God for the disobedient children of God. Everyone born into this material world is born with delusion. And because the world itself is a world of delusion. And the material world at any time would have never going to be any time when the material world will be free of anxiety, because it is called Loka, place of anxiety. But that does not mean that it should be, it should remain, while it is a place of anxiety, the living entity that comes here should remain here eternally, because the living entity eternally are not part of this material world. So no matter how the living entity exists in this material world, it will have to quit this material world at a point in time. And the ultimate purpose of being in this material world is not to remain in the material world, but to actually exit and go back to its original constitutional position, which is to go back to Godhead. And if that must be achieved, then there is a need for preaching, because the purpose of sending a prisoner or a criminal to the prison is not for the criminal to remain in the prison forever. It is to correct the prisoner to be able to reintegrate him back into the society. And for him to be reintegrated back into the society, there must be an endeavor by the authorities to revive his original nature, which is of good nature, so that it can be reintegrated back into the society. In the same way, the living entity are not part of this world. They have been here in this material world as a result of what Bhagavad Gita in chapter 7 of Bhagavad Gita, text number 27, Lord Krishna said that it's out of the desire and of the living entity that he has fallen into this material world. And so that desire that has brought him into this material world is what brings him all of the troubles that he goes through in the material world. But ultimately, the purpose of the material world is just like a prisoner, a correctional place, to get the prisoner to revive his original nature and go back into society. So the purpose of Krishna consciousness movement is to, while we are in this material world, even though we may be able to do so many mathematics, gymnastics in trying to solve the material problem, But there are 4 basic problems in this material world: birth, old age, disease, and death. We can't change that. And everyone in this material world may have one difficulty or the other difficulty, but these 4 basic problems are the real problems of living entity. Because by nature, the living entity is spirit soul. It's not meant to die, but we have to die. So these are the real problems. And to help the living entity to come out of this disease condition, there's a need for preaching. And that is why the Lord has come here. And he has sent his devotees to come here. So the Krishna consciousness teachings or the religious activities or the endeavor of a preacher in the material world is not to make the material world Vaikuntha local, but to take out those who are ready within the Kunta local place of anxiety to go back to the original constitutional nature, the spiritual world. I hope I answered your question.
Well,
Okay.
thank you, Salika Prabhu. I think we will go to Ganga Prashad Prabhu, and if we still have more time, Dr. George said he had more questions. So Ganga Prashad Prabhu, please unmute and ask your question. Good to see you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
My pleasure. Hare Krishna.
Hare
Salika Prabhu, all glory to your lotus feet. This was a very, very power-packed lecture, full of information. But then, with the passion you presented it, one will just go and embrace a transformer that is not able to apply it. But there's a need to exercise caution. So my point of interest is the promulgation of Varnashram Dharma. The way you presented it and how you put it, Prabhupada, sounded as if Varnashram Dharma is the ultimate goal of Krishna consciousness. But it is mentioned that Krishna consciousness is transcendental to Varnashram Dharma. I want to be able to reconcile this first point. And second point is, how can we apply this Varnashram that Krishna consciousness is transcendental to in practice of Krishna consciousness? How can we incorporate it? This is my question.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji, for your insight into the discuss. Yeah, Srila Prabhupada in the purport started the purport by emphasizing the Brahmanical culture and emphasizing that the protection of the Brahmanas maintains the institution. Prabhupada did not say the protection of Varnashram Dharma. Prabhupada mentioned the protection of Brahmanical culture. And as we know, the Brahmanical culture ultimately, if one is able to perfect the practice of Brahmanical culture, as mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita, it's said by Lord Krishna, Brahma Bhuta Prasana Atma Nasu Shati Nakam Shati Samasa Veshu Bhutishu Madbatim Labati Param, 1854. Lord Krishna told Arjuna, one who is actually liberated, because the goal of Brahmanical culture is to become liberated. But real liberation means that one attains the practice of bhakti. And in the lecture, I quoted the number 1 Shatosloki, 10:8 of Bhagavad Gita. And Lord Krishna explained that ultimately, when one actually becomes a genuinely knowledgeable person, the ultimate end is that he becomes a devotee. In other words, when Brahmanical culture or the Varnashram Dharma system is pursued, if it does not lead to bhakti, it means that it has not been pursued, because the purpose of Brahmanical culture or Varnashram Dharma system is to ultimately lead us to bhakti. If it does not lead us to that, it means the purpose of our Varnashram studies or Brahmanical culture is incomplete. And that's why in the lecture I mentioned Prahlad Maharaj. Prahlad Maharaj was asked, what is the best knowledge he has acquired? There are systematic process of education which goes from Brahmanical cultures to and all of those processes. But ultimately, that knowledge must lead one to bhakti, which are Prahlad Maharaj explained that can be practiced, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Padasevanam, and all of the other items of bhakti. So that is the ultimate goal of bhakti. So my emphasis on the Varnashram Dham system does not necessarily negate the fact that Varnashram Dham system is a process to getting to a goal. It is important, but if must lead us to a goal, if it does not lead us to the goal of Varnashram Dharma, because again, in chapter 15 of Bhagavad Gita, the whole of the purpose of the Vedas is to know Krishna. And if one really knows Krishna, he will surrender to Krishna in devotional service. So that is my little response to your comments. I hope I didn't disappoint.
Perfectly presented. Thank you very much, Hare Krishna. It's just that I said the passion with which you presented it. One will go and hug a transformer.
Well, interestingly, the thing is this, that our Krishna consciousness movement, when I was reading this text, when I was asked to speak on this text, the first thing that came to my mind was the 7 purposes of ISKCON. And I think that informs my passion, because the purpose of our joining ISKCON movement, the purpose of our preaching Krishna consciousness movement, is to be able to achieve the dream of Srila Prabhupada's purpose for preaching these teachings. And Prabhupada did a very wonderful job in the purport by itemizing those points to solve the world problem. But then one might be misdirected if he is looking at it from the global perspective and not looking inwardly, because to give something, you must have it. And that was why I had to speak so much emphasis on that aspect, so that at least I can try to represent Srila Prabhupada and the Acharyas. Thank you very much for the comment.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Well, thank you very much, Salika Prabhu. Thank you very much, Ganga Prasad Prabhu, for your question. I don't know if Judge Amega still has his question ready, but before he asks a question, like Judge Amega said, and Ganga Prasad also affirmed to that, your class generates lots of questions. And before any other devotee asked questions, I had already written down 5 questions.
Wow.
That I had for you. And I'm not even going to touch any of the 5 questions I have. I'm going to ask a question concerning Ganga Prasad Prabhu's question, which you answered to my understanding very beautifully. And that is, we belong to this precious organization called ISKCON, and we all following Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada had an agenda, and it is our responsibility as members to follow Srila Prabhupada's agenda and make sure that we implement his agenda. But lots of us today, especially like those of us on this forum now, are all not direct disciples of Srila Prabhupada. We are disciples of Srila Prabhupada's disciples. And some of these disciples, because they are individuals, they all have their likes and dislikes, or they have things they deem to be so important, and certain things, even though they may not have disinterest in them, but it's not like on top of their list. And we cannot jump over our immediate gurus to go to Srila Prabhupada. And the present guru we're following does not have so much interest in one thing. For example, I wouldn't mention them, but there was a guru who was asked a question that, Maharaj, what are we doing about devotees? Devotees sit in class and all they do is to sleep. Why are they sleeping? Because they wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning. They don't go to sleep till 10 o'clock at night. And this nonstop. And we are humans. They will get tired. And some devotees do not even have toothpaste to brush their teeth. And the Maharaj's answer was, that is the problem. Krishna says, Masuchaha, do not fear, just surrender to Krishna, and Krishna will provide everything. So, even though it's true, the Maharaj is addressing the spiritual aspect of why we are in devotional service, but we can also deny the material needs. So, if I have a guru like this, who seem not to pay much attention to my material needs, is it offensive? Or let me put it this way, how do I maintain my integrity, my respect to this, my immediate guru, and also at the same time follow Srila Prabhupada's teachings that you have to care for both the material needs and the spiritual needs? Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much for the. When Sadeh Prabhu wants to ask questions, then I have to sit because even gurus have to receipt themselves. When
Prabhu, no.
Thank you very much for the way you put the question. I really appreciate that. But actually, it's a simple question in the sense that for us, we're so fortunate, extremely fortunate. And I tell you why we're fortunate. Srila Prabhupada's direct disciples are very fortunate because they had the opportunity to learn directly from Srila Prabhupada. But we are more fortunate than Srila Prabhupada's disciple. I'll tell you why. Because not only that we have Srila Prabhupada who has manifested himself, the whole of himself. Srila Prabhupada said, my purpose are my realization. So Srila Prabhupada put himself in his book. So we have Prabhupada in the book. But beyond that, we have practitioners or followers of Srila Prabhupada in life reality. So we have two opportunities. Unlike Srila Prabhupada's disciple who had Srila Prabhupada, but they had no other experience. So we have Prabhupada, we have the experience of those who are disciples of Srila Prabhupada. And in the same way, those who are disciples of the disciple of Srila Prabhupada will be more fortunate. In a Bhakti Sastri class, there was one devotee. His name is Madhu Sundan Das. He was teaching Bhakti Sastri. And I put two of my daughters there. So to encourage them, I said, let me also join this class. And he was presenting Bhakti Sastri. And I was telling this devotee, I said, do you know how much more fortunate than you are than your guru? Because why? Even in our own days, this devotee probably joined maybe about 10, 15 years after I've been in ISKCON. And I was telling him, I said, in our days, my first exposure to Bhakti Sastri was in 1993. And one of my godbrother, senior godbrother, Gita Govinda, was the one that first gave me. And I think he's always my companion. If you look here, I have that book here. I don't know whether that book is still in print. That was the first book I got that made me to understand what Bhakti Sastri was all about. And later on, I got another copy of it from Omkara Prabhu when he was living in Nigeria. In those days, if you are serious about devotional service, you will have to go and scout by rendering services to the senior devotees. Then they will give you tips like this message that I got from Gita Govinda Prabhu. But in today's ISKCON, not only that it is being taught as a basis, not only that it has been made a foundation for being initiated as a devotee that you must learn, you are being given opportunity to so many trainings which was not there in the Srila Prabhupada direct disciples days. And even now, the situation is expanding. So, therefore, for us, there is no excuse for not being better than Srila Prabhupada's direct disciples, because we have more than what they have in Srila Prabhupada. Because we have them, we have Srila Prabhupada. But then, talking about the other aspect of your question, talking about the guru that has no interest in one particular place, there is no fault. In chapter 3, text number, I think that was text number 45, and chapter 18, text number 47. I think 325 and 1825, Prabhupada emphasized that one should better do what is of his nature than trying to do other person's job. So if a devotee, not even a guru, decides not to be interested or is not interested in one aspect of Krishna consciousness, that is not a fault. That is not a fault at all for that guru or any devotee for that matter, because naturally, not all of us can be perfect in every aspect of Krishna consciousness. In fact, it is mentioned that just by one anger, one branch of bhakti process, whether by chanting, by hearing, by prayers, one can attain perfection. So for the fact that a guru has attraction for one aspect and is not interested in other aspect does not fault that guru. It does not make him less qualified. It's just that it's in that mood. But then let us talk about the disciple. Let me tell you that no disciple gets any particular guru without being due for that particular guru. Because Lord Krishna said in Bhagavad Gita 10:10, Tiksham saktakta yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam jinamamu payantite. To them, as they surrender to me, as we desire in our heart, Krishna will reciprocate and give us a particular type of a guru. Krishna will not give us a guru that we are not due for. If you are particularly a disciple of a particular guru, it's because of your internal desire, internal meditation. And Krishna, in the next verse of that text number 10, Chatusloki verse, he said that he explained how he's going to do it. He said, I dwelling in the art of the Tisham Ivanu Kampatam, Aham Agyanam Jantama, Nasami Atma Bavatsu, Gena Dipena Baswata. He said, I dwelling in the region of the art. It doesn't say that externally, my temple president, my temple commander, that devotee. He said, I in the art, I will direct, because I will remove the veil to show you who is your guru. So it is not, no one can say, I mistakenly accepted this guru. You have accepted a particular guru based on your internal desire. Your sincerity is manifested in the kind of guru you are given by Krishna. Yasya prasada bhagavat prasadu, yasya prasada nagati kutopi. Krishna will give you a guru based on your desire. And by your following that particular guru, you will get Krishna. Now, whether that devotee is attached to this aspect of devotional service, kirtan only, and you are attached to being another aspect of devotional service, does not disqualify you as a disciple and does not diminish your opportunity or your means of getting perfection in Krishna consciousness. It's all based on our understanding of the scriptures. I hope I answered your question, Prabhuji.
Yes, I have a follow-up question, but I'll leave it to say if any other devotee has a question. But I have a follow-up question to the answer you just gave.
Thank you, sir.
Does anybody have any question? Okay, Dr. George. Dr. George, unmute and ask your question, please.
Yes, Dr. George.
So I think my network is down a little bit. Anyway, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, my network is down a little bit. That's why I have to turn off the video. Anyway, okay. Prabhu, thank you very much once again. Here about one of my questions I asked before. but I think then I was not answered properly. All the answer was not satisfactory, so I have to bring it back. Since the verse that I asked the question on is what we are teaching today. In the purport mentioned that these four people, the Brahmana, the children, and the cow, as long as the women, when they are fully protected, then our society will be beneficial. So here comes my question. I was asking that
we lost him.
even when you involve a church woman, your life expectancy or your life.
Dr. George.
So here,
Dr. George, you will have to.
I'm telling you.
Listen, Dr. George, hold on.
Yeah, so?
Yeah, we missed a lot of what you were saying. So if you can restate what you were saying, please.
But my network is down, so I think I cannot hear you.
Okay, maybe you should type in the chat box.
Yeah, can you type it? Because we lost you halfway.
Oh, okay.
We lost you halfway.
Okay, but can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Typing, since I'm doing visually, typing sometimes become a little bit difficult for me. That's why. So maybe if I can. Okay, what I mean is, then I was asking that the emphasis was laid on a church woman, as Prabhupada cited Draupadi as an example. That when you even insulted a church woman, your life expectancy will be reduced. That was Satya Yoga. Now we are in Kali Yoga. That we know that most of our women now, most of them, they were not church. So I'm asking, the rule at that time and the rule today, is it still the same? That was a question that I asked them, but it's like I've not phrased it well. So it's being misunderstood. So if Prabhu Salika, if you can do me justice and answer this question for me, I will be glad. Yes.
If I understand you correctly, you were trying to ask in the days, glorious day, like Papa put it in the purport, and in today's reality, the women, the chastity of women are not the same. So therefore, does the rule applies?
Even Papa say if you even insulted a woman,
yes. Okay, I think I understand the question.
Yeah. Okay.
The scriptures are described as apauration. They are transcendental. They are not limited to time, place, and circumstances because they are manifestation of Krishna's art. So the truth is truth yesterday, today, and tomorrow. So there is no difference, but application might be different. What is different in today and in the previous ages is the application of the principles. But the principles is the same. In today's reality, if those 5 items Prabhupada mentioned, protecting the Brahmanical culture, the women, the cows, the old aged one, and the children, if they are protected as stated in the scriptures, we'll have Kali Yuga we have Satya Yuga in Kali Yuga. But then, let us talk specifically about the women, as you ask. Can we give protection to the women? Yes, you must give protection to the woman. That is the injunction of the scriptures. That is what the scripture says. We must accord them. The problem here is that most times when you see somebody said a particular woman is not chaste, then how did he got involved with that unchaste woman? You know, everybody can easily point, but when you point, the last finger is pointing to you. Because potato planting will not produce corn harvesting. Each and every one of us are a recipient of what, based on our punya karma from our previous life, as stored in our life for us. Today, there are chaste women, but they are very rare. Just like there are chaste men also, but they are very rare. And the whole essence of Krishna consciousness is for us, ourselves, to become that chaste man. And when we become chaste ourselves, we will naturally attract a chaste partner. You don't get unchaste partner if you are chaste man. It doesn't happen like that because nature doesn't make mistakes. The activities of material nature is carried on under the influence of material nature, which is divine, as Krishna mentions. And divine material nature is working under Krishna's supervision. So there is nothing that is happened inappropriately based on Krishna's arrangement or accidentally. Everything is happening according to Krishna's arrangement based on our obedience and then carried over from our previous life. So therefore, again, I will emphasize that our experience is a reflection of our internal meditation. A Krishna conscious person, Lord Krishna told Arjuna, my dear Arjuna, one who does good, my dear friend, can never be befallen by evil. So if you want to experience a chaste wife, we must first become a chaste man, and we'll get a chaste woman. And what is required to become a chaste man or a chaste woman are already enumerated in the scriptures. We just simply need to live it. Just like I said in the lecture, Garbhadan Samskara, we are all devotees, but how many of us are following that? So that reflects the kind of children we're getting. It's as simple as ABC. The taste of honey is not in looking at the bottle of the honey. It is in tasting the honey, opening the bottle and tasting it. Hare Krishna. I don't know whether I answered your question, Prabhu.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, quite clear. Okay. Hare Krishna.
Well, we've gone over 90 minutes. I don't know if anybody, Ganga Prashad Prabhu has a question. Yes, Ganga Prabhu, please unmute and ask your question.
Yeah, basically, I don't have a question. I only have a contribution to support George Amega's question. And the Prabhu Salika rightly answered. In protecting women, even though they sound unchaste, is first, Prabhupada said in the purport of that 140 or 141, that irresponsible men in society provoke adultery. Without irresponsible men, women will not be unchaste. So like Prabhupada Salika answered, let the men become chaste. And not only by being chaste, Prabhupada said, both women and children should be properly engaged in Krishna conscious activities. So even if they are unchaste and we are taking them on Harinam, we're engaging them in Krishna service, slowly the process will purify them. And by engaging them and ensuring that they are in proper situation, that's also a way of helping them to become chaste. So even those that would think that they were born out of non-compliance or Garbhodana Sanskara, which is a majority of the experience, but if we diligently engage them in Krishna conscious practices, you see that they start falling into alignment and they become what asset we are looking for, and they'll be useful. That's my contribution.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ganga Prashad Prabhu. Thank you.
Very grateful for your being there.
Yeah.
To add up to this. And actually, you're perfectly right. We produce what we live. And if the women are properly engaged, and then we can even see in the life of Srila Prabhupada, it's a practical example is there. Srila Prabhupada, every ISKCON gurus and powerful devotees that we see today, we are all derelicts, hippies, as we call them, and many other, so many names. They are rejected persons in the society. But because of Srila Prabhupada's purity, he was able to transform them into becoming a devotee. And that is what he called the Krishna consciousness miracle. And we have to become the miracle of carrier of our own times. And that's why Srila Prabhupada emphasized Krishna consciousness is hanging on 4 balances. Purity is the first. It comes first. Preaching is the essence, because when you are pure, then your preaching will become purified and it becomes effective. And then when you are trying to preach, where will the preaching? Because people tend to forget in Kali Yuga, the books are the basis. I can share one short story to you. Mama Taji today, when I was joining Krishna consciousness, I was already established in Christendom. And when I was leaving, of course, I was thinking of celibacy then. Then my wife, she's my wife today. We have been married, we've been engaged for several years before I joined Krishna consciousness. And then I told her I'm leaving. I'm not going to be following this path again, but I don't want to compel you. You are free to go. Fortunately for me, then we don't have any kids. And I told her, I said, you're free to go. Then she said, this thing you have joined, I can't understand it. I said, well, you have no liberty to join and follow me. But then he said, okay, you can go, but what do they really teach? I said, well, I cannot present what they teach, but I can do one thing. Take the book. If you can read the book, you form your own opinion. My own opinion after reading the books is what is making me to take this decision. So therefore, you can form your own opinion, whether it is good or it is bad. So I gave him Science of Self-Realization and Christ and Krishna. And when she started reading it, that translates into her today being with me in Krishna consciousness. So if someone is not unchaste, we identify that they are really unchaste. Yes, it's not a problem. The potency of our Krishna consciousness should manifest in transforming them. So if we are not able to, it means we are not purified enough. So we need to work on ourselves. And we'll see the reality of what we want in our practice of Krishna consciousness. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
That's beautiful, beautiful class. Nice questions, nice answers, nice follow-ups. Actually, when George Amega was asking his question, I was thinking of the text we actually read. Let me see if I can screen share the text. Because, let me see here.
Yeah.
Let me see. I'm trying to move this way. Srila Prabhupada was saying here, in the glorious days of before the advent of the age of Kali, the Brahmins, the cows, the women, the children, and the old men were properly given protection. So,
Hare Krishna.
Maybe
I
you
think we
mute
lost
yourself.
the network.
Unmute yourself. I think you mute
No,
yourself.
it's not muted. I think it's just network.
Okay. Okay.
I think Prabhu is having some network challenge. Let's wait a little bit. Maybe the bandwidth of the network, because
Yes, it's now
sharing.
joined. No.
Okay, we lost him.
Sorry. Yeah. I made a mess here. Sorry.
Okay.
I was trying
Okay.
to.
Let me share the text for you, and then we can read from there. Because
Actually, I got it, because from, I don't know, maybe it might benefit other devotees, but I was trying to emphasize that Srila Prabhupada indicates that in the glorious days or before the advent of the age of Kali, the Brahmins, the cows, the women, the children, and the old men were properly given protection. He does not give any qualifiers that if the Brahmin is acting as a Brahmin, if the cow is providing milk, if a woman is chaste, if children are obedient to their parents, none of such clauses. So simply put, if one is a Brahmin, if one is a lady, if one is an elderly person, you just give them the necessary respect. So, I mean, it sounds logically sensible that if somebody is not doing the right thing, why do the right thing to him or her? But I don't think that is the case in this situation, because Sri Prabhupada simply says these 5 things, just give them the utmost respect. So I think that should do. And we are almost like 1 hour 45 minutes. So if we might say thank you to Salika Prabhu. Let me see. Okay, Ganga Prashat Prabhu. Well, okay, we'll take a last question. You can unmute.
It's not a major question. It's just
Okay.
I needed to be updated about the review of moving from Bhagavad Gita to Bhagavatam today. What is the transformation?
Okay. I thank you. I asked the same question to Kusha Prabhu, and he explained to me that he's already made a schedule, which are all for Bhagavad Gita classes. But today wasn't scheduled, and we had Salika Prabhu, who was available to speak. And so because he was available to speak, he was asked to speak from this particular Bhagavatam chapter. So according to Kusha Prabhu, he has days lined up for different devotees to speak on the Bhagavad Gita, but other than those days, if any devotee is available to speak, then the devotee might be speaking from Srimad Bhagavatam. So that is the reason why we have this change.
Thank you very much. I
Hare
just
Krishna.
needed to know. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, I think I might encourage him to put it on the forum so devotees will understand.
Yeah. I think it is important because
Yes.
also when he asked me about whether I would be available to give the class, then he gave the Bhagavatam class, and I was asking the same question. So just like you, he did mention that the text of the Bhagavad Gita and the dates have been scheduled.
Yes.
So even if he's going to bring the Bhagavad Gita, it means jumping to the forward
Yes.
and coming back again. So instead of doing that mismatch, he decided that we can, off days when we don't have speakers, different devotees can be asked to speak on Bhagavatam class. So, but I think it needs to inform all the.
Salika Prabhu, I'll plead with you. We have Madanarayani who has a hand up. Maybe you can pick a question.
It's all right. We're all learning and sharing.
Okay, so Madanarayani, you can unmute and ask your question, please.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you for such amazing class. But I have a question about the protection of women. I know that Prabhupada was saying, as a woman, when you are young, your dad will protect you. And then when you get married, your husband will protect you. And then when your husband dies and you have a son, your son will protect you. So what about if you're a woman and you don't have a son? So who will protect you if you don't have a son?
Thank you very much. That's the next question. That question was also asked sometimes back to Srila Prabhupada. The first thing is that according to Vedic standard, and let's also use the word Prabhupada is in the glorious days, it is unnatural for a married couple, if there is a qualified man and a qualified woman, there must be a son. That is actually one of the signs of compatible and ideal but in real cases, okay, if the elderly person is not there, then the woman, depending on a situation, will take shelter of, in some cases, like where there are ashrams, the women take. We have seen so many Sanyasini in our history. The woman could take shelter of an ashram where, under the guidance of other senior shelter to be able to for protection. And there's such women who does not have children. In our today ISKCON, we have so many fathers and mothers. Of course, the scripture says that one should not become a father, mother, teacher, king, if he's not qualified. In our today ISKCON, the Prabhupada has created this facility of ISKCON House to give support and coverage for such a situation. But in the ancient times, it's a very rare case, which is always very rare. But in our Kali Yuga age, where everything is not in the right place, if such a situation happens, a senior family member or a spiritual ashram where there is an organized system, such a woman can take shelter into such an institutions and then be protected. But for whatever reason, a woman should never live independently, like we see it happen today.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Ganga Prabhu, you can unmute.
Yeah, Hare Krishna Prabhuji, thank you. It's just to add up to what Prabhu Salika has said. You gave the answer, but straight jacket, he said the guru, the lady can take shelter of the guru's home. Guru's home becomes the property and responsibility of guru. That's the first thing. And last option, because she was raised in a God-conscious background, parentage is also godly. If she can't go to the guru ashram, she can return to the parents. This is what is stated in the scripture. She can return home or take shelter of guru if these are the experiences.
Okay, thank you very much for the addition, Prabhu. Thank you very much for the support. But George Amiga is saying in his tradition, women are given to younger brother. But yeah, even in Vedic times, sometimes we see that such traditions are there. But nowadays, because actually there are lack of qualification, the age of Kali is characterized by so much of lack of qualifications. So the traditions also are not Sattvic. Not Sattvic in the sense that they're not recommended, they are not influenced by goodness, because most times you see that neither the so-called brother or elderly person in the family are doing it genuinely because there is an intention to protect the woman. Most of the time, when they say the brother or the uncle is accepting the woman, it's not mentally because they want to protect, probably because they want to fulfill their same gratification or to acquire the property of the deceased. That is mostly what happens in Kali Yuga. But otherwise, in Vedic age, sometimes also these kind of traditions are there. But in this age, they are not really recommended, because actually it's very difficult to find qualified people.
Well, thank you, Salika Prabhu. Actually, it's interesting. What's the name? Dr. George Mega's question that in his culture, the lady will be given to the younger brother. Somebody just, I'll look for it. If I find it, I'll post it on the WhatsApp forum. But I was surprisingly shocked when this person sent me this video. There was a documentary done on CNN, and one lady went to India and interviewed some families, but it's still a tradition in India, some parts of India, where, like, I think there were 4 or so brothers, and they were all married to one woman. And it's still a tradition that some people follow, just like the Pandavas and Draupadi. So the lady has kids with all the 4 men who are brothers. And then when the woman was asked, so which of these 4 fathers is the father to this child? She said, no. Oh, sorry. She said, I don't know. It's all of them. And so the lady does not even try to differentiate whose child is this, whose child is that. She wholly accepts that all the 4 brothers are one, which is, to my understanding and my experience, I said, wow, that is amazing. Whatever we read in the scripture are real. Even till today, it's still there. And CNN, which is going to say it's just a mundane news media, they went to India and this documentary. I'll look for it and post it on the forum. I think it might interest some people. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, Kali guys is filled with so many abnormalities. Let's put it that way. And that is the characteristics of this age. So we can't change most of these things. But the important thing is this, that Srila Prabhupada has built a house in which the whole world can live. And that is the uniqueness of this Krishna consciousness movement. And it's extending for the next 10,000 years. So there is no excuse for anyone not to have shelter, because Srila Prabhupada has made this house to accommodate every strata of the society. So that's the most applicable thing to do. You take shelter, like Ganga Prasad also said, you take shelter of the Guru's ashram. So we have no difficulty. Prabhupada has provided everything. So it's just simply for us to take shelter, and that's what is important.
Okay, thank you so much. I think I would like to end on this common saying that blood is thicker than water. And so usually when we have our own family, we tend to lean more towards our biological family because blood is thicker than water. But higher than that, or even better than that, is that love is also thicker than blood. And so if we as devotees begin to live our lives in such a way that love is thicker than blood, and so even though this widow or widower doesn't belong to me biologically, but if I have love, it's much thicker than blood. So I have to give him or her all the support she needs or he needs. Okay, Hare Krishna. Based on that, I think we might bring the class to a close. And I must say, sometimes the unexpected becomes the most nectarian because we were not expecting to have a class today, and we did have a class today, and it's been, I mean, if it was, of course, it's a prasadam, but if it's something edible, we would say this was a very sumptuous prasadam. Thank you all very much. So I think at this point we can all unmute ourselves and chant big Hare Krishna Mahamantra to the speaker, Salika Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Thank you all very much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Hare Krishna. Wow.
Hare Krishna. Thank you all, devotees.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.